everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today I'm doing a Panda Express hack that I wrote for the Panda Express Beijing Beef, which is one of their deep fried dishes that uses Angus steak in lieu of the more commonly found chicken breast or sometimes chicken thigh. It's a recipe that I wrote and published a couple days ago up on the YouTube channel, so if you're interested in reproducing what you're watching on stream, as with pretty much everything that I cook on stream, the recipe lives up on the YouTube channel, which a couple folks are already watching because we also live stream on YouTube. So, if you're also, Kieran, yes, hello. If you're also interested in cooking along with me, everything that I cook also exists on a schedule on YouTube. So if you want, you can look up what we're going to be cooking in the next couple of days, actually the next couple of weeks, and you can cook alongside me. So that's super fun. And a couple folks have started doing that once in a while, so super fun. If you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. I don't know everything about wok cooking or Panda Express or Chinese food in general, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful or informative, or at the very least entertaining to watch. Let's see. As with many of the savory Chinese dishes that I have done, probably almost everything that I cook on stream actually, because I'm almost always cooking for dinner, I'm starting with some finely minced ginger and then followed by some crushed and minced garlic. So the reason that we very frequently start with these two elements is because everything needs to taste like garlic and ginger, but it's because they are two very essential baseline ingredients when you're trying to build out umami. I know everything about wok cooking. No, I don't. Crystal probably knows everything about wok cooking at this point though, because she's watched almost every stream. Yes, so with ginger, ginger is, along with garlic, are the two fundamental elements of umami. So you will very frequently see it. Anytime that you look up a Chinese recipe, probably the very first two things that you see in every single recipe is going to be garlic and ginger. That is why, if you ask your Chinese friends how much garlic they eat in a given week or in a given grocery run, they're probably going to be a couple, 5, 10, 15 cloves of garlic. It's because we use it in every single recipe because it goes as the fundamental layer of umami. So for our garlic, I'm giving it a good crush with the flat side of my knife. Don't use the sharp side or you're going to slice your hand open. And then if you've done it right, which I didn't do just now, the skin should really just pop right off, because once you crush the garlic, everything sort of just crumbles and it sort of splits open. So that's usually a pretty good technique for, or at least my technique for getting the garlic open. A couple of folks have also asked me, I think mainly because the garlic that I'm using right now is sprouted. So when you see your garlic start sprouting, which is those green bits of stem that are popping out of my garlic right now, that happens when your garlic gets really old. So this particular garlic I think I inherited from someone. I forget where I got it from, but somebody gave it to me, which means that it's probably pretty old. So it has these stems. That's essentially a sign that your garlic is starting to grow into new garlic. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. You don't need to throw that stuff out. You just need to pick it out. Probably don't want to eat it because it's probably going to give you heartburn. But otherwise, it's pretty edible, and I have, on the often occasion, just straight up eaten it because I was lazy and didn't feel like picking it out. But definitely, when you see your garlic start sprouting, don't go and throw that stuff out. It's still perfectly edible. Just pick out the stem first. When you see your garlic starting to turn brown or mold, that's when it's a sign that your garlic is time to throw it out. And that will also happen. Sometimes that happens even before it starts sprouting. So, because that can happen for a variety of reasons, and it may or may not be related to how old the garlic is. So. But as long as it's not brown or molding, or you don't see weird spots on it, your garlic is still perfectly edible. Yeah, you can totally plant them too. Someone asked me recently if I grow my garlic, grow my own garlic. I grow a lot of my own stuff. Actually, not a lot of my own stuff. Mainly, I grow my own green onions because they're very easy to grow. But I've discovered that there's not really a point. Garlic is super cheap, so you might as well just buy it yourself, unless you're really into gardening. But it's so cheap that I had originally started, I also used to grow my own onions, but then I kind of just discovered that, like, I guess there's just more interesting things to grow. So eventually I stopped. But yeah, totally. You can anytime you see a veggie that's sprouting, you can just put that in soil, or even just put it in a cup of water, and it'll start growing. Alright, so next up, this is a yellow bell pepper. So the original recipe that I had written for this Beijing beef uses a red bell pepper, because that's what they use at Panda Express. But I actually think that it detracts a little bit, and I actually don't think that it's the right call. I think they use it because it's maybe one of the cheaper bell peppers that you can get, and maybe it's a cost thing. But I feel like red bell peppers a little bit less sweet because they're a little bit less ripened than a yellow bell pepper. So I have tended to use yellow bell peppers because I found not only does it look better, so it definitely looks better because deep fried beef, as you can imagine, it's very dark already. So if you add something red to it, just kind of adds to the darkness. But if you add a yellow bell pepper instead, it gives this nice contrast. But also it's a little bit sweeter, I think, too. So. I've been in the habit of using yellow bell peppers, but the main reason that I'm using yellow bell peppers today is because they were on sale at the grocery store yesterday, so that's the real reason. Scraps are delicious, yeah, so lots of other people have been asking me what I'm doing with my scraps because I sweep stuff this way. So my sink is right here, but that's not going into the disposal, it's going into a big giant plastic bag. And that plastic bag, so once that fills up, it probably fills up every maybe once a month or so. But once it fills up, I throw it in a big stock pot, and then I boil it with some beef bones. And what happens when you boil a bunch of scraps with beef bones is it turns into beef stock, which is an extremely useful substance to have on hand for a variety of things. You will see, if you follow my recipes before, you've definitely seen me using my own beef stock. It's sort of like the secret ingredient to a whole bunch of Chinese food, or actually just like a whole bunch of foods in general, when you substitute out the use of powdered stock for beef stock or your own homemade stock. And it's literally just garbage water. It is a literal garbage water. And it's the real secret ingredient to probably like 50% of everything that I cook. So if you have the time and the wherewithal to remember to throw your scraps into a plastic bag. So throw it in a plastic bag, and then I just throw this into my freezer. And then every about a month or so, when I run out of beef stock, boil it up. Oops, I'm chopping this in the wrong direction. You tried this meal, but it didn't turn out right. That's unfortunate. If you tell me what went wrong, and maybe I can help you. Alright, so I just started slicing these, but that's not actually what I want to do, so I went for a large dice, and part of them are going to be the wrong size because I have sliced them slightly wrong. So the size that we're going for, it needs to be relatively similar to the size of our bell peppers, which is a pretty large piece of onion. So in an aggressive wok fry like what we're about to do, we want these to have quite a bit of surface area, because once it gets into the wok fry, it's going to start coming apart almost immediately, because wok fries are very, very aggressive. So if we don't cut them up large enough, eventually it's just going to fall apart. So not what we're after. What is my favorite Japanese food? Ooh. Go back and forth on a lot of stuff. I want to say ramen, but I feel like that's a cop-out. Everyone likes ramen. Maybe chicken katsu. I used to eat chicken katsu a lot when I was a kid. I feel like that's maybe a really basic answer, but I really love chicken katsu, so I feel like that's going to be my answer, is chicken katsu. I really love chicken katsu. Or chicken katsu don, even, which is chicken katsu that's done in like a ramen broth, like an egg battered ramen broth. So, can you look at his camera angle? Yeah, totally. He uses a GoPro on his head, which I don't have. But I bet it looks super goofy because he has a camera strapped to his head though. But yeah, definitely he's one of my heroes for sure. That guy knows everything about cooking, like everything there is to know. Golden curry, yeah, that's like a golden curry. For folks who are not familiar, golden curry is like a boxed curry roux, and I used to make my curry for years from that boxed roux. After a while, I kind of just started moving away from using the boxed roux because I was finding that I kind of wanted to add other stuff to the roux. And when you use something that's made from a pre-made roux, you can't really make a lot of adjustments to it. It's you're kind of stuck with what it tastes like. So I eventually have since sort of migrated away from using golden curry box roux. But definitely, if you're just getting into learning more about making curries and making stews and stuff, golden curry definitely a good place to start because it has a lot of the fundamentals. The curry recipe, yeah, totally. The curry recipe, I think, the Japanese curry I did was one of the very, very first recipes that I did. So that's going to be up on the YouTube channel. But we also did it on a live stream earlier too, so that's available. I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today I'm cooking up a Panda Express hack that I wrote a couple of days ago. That was last Friday. That published up on my YouTube channel, which is a hack for the Panda Express Beijing Beef. Beijing Beef, if you're not familiar with it, is the Panda Express deep fried dish that uses Angus steak in place of chicken. So I thought it was very interesting because I've honestly never seen deep fried beef before. So we're going to do it with a tempura batter or a tempura fry for a super, super crunchy fried beef. This is also, full disclosure, is one of the about as far away from authentic Chinese cooking as you can get as a Beijing beef. But that said, though, it is also one of the most tasty things that I have literally ever made. It's so delicious because it's just straight up fried beef, and fried beef is awesome. So if you don't like fried beef, I don't know what's wrong with you because it's beef and it's fried. So but it's definitely not authentic Chinese cooking, but it's sort of in line with the series that we've been doing, which is up on the YouTube channel. And I've sort of been deconstructing a lot of Chinese American cuisine and kind of seeing what a lot of that cuisine looks like, why it looks the way that it looks, what kind of happened to Chinese food when it came to America, and what are the American aspects of Chinese American food and why does it look the way that it looks. So we've been doing a whole series about that, so that's sort of been part of my motivation for deconstructing so many Panda Express recipes. I did Panda Express, so a bunch of the hacks that I've done are based on Panda Express recipes. So I know I did, what did I do recently? We did the Kung Pao chicken, that was a couple weeks ago. We did the honey sesame chicken, the General Tso's chicken, and a couple other things. There's the mushu pork from P.F. Chang's that's coming up soon, and sort of been deconstructing Chinese American food and sort of taking a look at what happened to Chinese American food when it came to America. And then usually when I do one of those hacks, I'll do a second version, which is the Woo Can Cook version, and that version usually involves replacing a lot of the American elements, so things like brown sugar or honey, and replacing them with things that are from authentic Chinese cooking. So with this recipe, very frequently I'll replace honey and brown sugar with the use of sweet chili sauce, and kind of digging into the elements of Chinese food that inspired the things that make Chinese American food. So if you're interested in cooking stuff yourself, that's all up on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/woocancook. We're releasing new recipes every Friday. I'm streaming here every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST. New recipes every Friday. Oh, and Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:30 PST, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST. And the new recipes, those are up on YouTube every Friday. So lots of fun content over there. I've also gotten in the habit of live streaming on YouTube right now. So lots of folks, a couple folks watching on YouTube with me right now. So over on YouTube, you will find all of the recipes, or not just all of the recipes, but the schedule of everything that I cook in addition to all of the recipes. So if you want to cook along with me, you can look that up and you can definitely cook with me. So lots of fun stuff to do over there. Let me know if you have any questions. I miss questions a lot because sometimes the chat starts scrolling really, really fast and I don't catch them all. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and I'll do my best to answer everyone. What knife is it? So the knife is a French chef's knife called a sabatier. It's not a sabatier. It's a Père Noir Nugent. And the knife brand it specifically is based off of. It's a very, very popular copy of a more famous chef's knife called a sabatier. Sabatier, I think, is the one that you can probably find more readily, commercially available. But this one is actually a antique chef's knife that I found at an estate sale. So that was pretty cool. being able to find it. So right now I'm going to separate some egg whites, and I'm pausing a second because I always mess this up. So you need 3 bowls for separating your egg whites. So what I'm going to do is, how am I going to do this? Yeah. So I'm going to drop my first egg white into this bowl. So we're separating it over there, and then I'm putting the yolk in the second bowl, and then I'm dropping my egg whites into my third bowl. So very important, you don't want to crack all of your egg yolks over the same bowl, because what will happen is if you mess up and you break the yolk somehow, you will end up with yolks in all of your egg whites, which is not what we're after. And then you have to start all over again. So we really don't want to do that. So if you use 3 bowls and then crack the yolks over a separate bowl, you can maximize or minimize the potential for fucking up, basically. Right. Yeah, totally. I'm sorry, I'm missing a lot of comments right now. Whoa, there's 4,000 people watching. That's crazy. Yeah, okay, so right now what I'm doing, so I'm separating some egg whites, and what I'm doing is I'm going to set up my tempura batter. So if you've never done a tempura batter before, it looks a bit different from like a standard like southern fried chicken batter or like a double breaded batter, because a tempura batter is a wet batter. So usually, more commonly, if you were doing like a chicken fried steak or something, you would see 2 different stations, usually like an egg wash followed by a dried batter. So your flour over here, your egg over here. Tempura batter is a wet batter, so we're going to throw everything into the same bowl, and then we're going to coat it in that wet batter. And in my experience, that has been one of the most crunchy ways, most efficient ways to getting a super crunchy deep fry, for me at least. So this is 2 egg whites followed by 1/4 cup of cornstarch and a 1/4 cup of flour. So 2 parts of flour and 2 egg whites. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mix it up, and then we're going to start breading our beef in it. Oop, I forgot. We also need a 1/4 cup of water. I was wondering why this is so dry. So equal parts flour, cornstarch, water, followed by 2 egg whites, and then we're just mixing this up until we get a pretty smooth batter forming. Yeah, same batter that you would use so for like tempura shrimp. I don't know why I can't think of other tempuras right now, but definitely tempura shrimp is the same kind of batter. So it's a very loose and liquidy batter. We're really just working on breaking down all of those clumps. And that looks pretty good. Use a dry measuring cup for water. Yeah, that's usually, or what you really want to do is use a dry measuring cup for flour and cornstarch, and then use the same measuring cup for water. So usually, so what Dave is saying is you don't want to use a wet measuring cup for measuring dry ingredients, because once you get it wet, everything starts sticking to it. So it's a real pain in the ass, because then you have to wash the thing. So I guess that's a good tip that I'd never really thought about, but is actually a good tip, is when you do things like tempura batters and you have to measure dry and wet stuff, measure the dry stuff first and then measure the wet stuff. That way you can use a dry measuring cup to measure the wet stuff, and you don't have cornstarch sticking to your measuring cup. All right, so we're just going to spread our steak in our tempura batter and give it a good soak. At this point, this is the point where you would typically see what I really should be doing. The employment of the wet hand, dry hand technique, which I think in this point, yeah, might still help. So what we're doing is we're using one hand for our wet stuff, which is our tempura batter, and one hand for our dry stuff, which is our beef. So I'm picking up the beef with one hand, so I'm doing this very, very specifically. My left hand is handling the beef when it's dry. My right hand is handling the beef when it's wet. So what that happens is we're avoiding a whole bunch of tempura batter building up on one hand. So if you've ever breaded chicken before, you've had the experience of like halfway through the tempura or battering process, you end up with a big batter claw. So you have a whole bunch of stuff stuck to your hand and you can't do anything anymore. So that's why we use the wet hand, dry hand technique, which is keeping one hand dry at all times so that you don't have the problem of tempura batter hands. Cool. What steak cut is it? Yeah, it's Angus sirloin. I've done it with a bunch of different things. So I think the last time I did it was with Angus sirloin. I also did it with a skirt steak at one point. I've done it with flank steak too, which is very interesting. In the end, I've decided that Angus sirloin was probably the best choice out of all of them, mainly because steak is inherently very, very chewy. Unless you're going to use a very, very nice cut of steak, which you really shouldn't do if you're deep frying steak. It's going to be a little bit chewy, which means that if you use something like skirt steak or flank steak, it's going to be kind of hard to chew, which is why it's super important. You'll notice actually that the steak is actually chopped pretty small. So I did that pretty intentionally because it's going to be really annoying to bite into if it's in a large shape, because steak is a lot chewier than say like a typical orange chicken, which is made out of chicken thigh. So a little bit more tender, and you can cut it and chop it into larger bite sizes, and you will still be able to eat it. But if our steak today is too thick or too large, then you're gonna have basically inedible bits of steak. So we're going for very, very small bite sizes, and I have found that I think the scale, or it's like a ratio between what's affordable or cost effective, what makes sense for using in a deep fry, and what's tender enough to bite into is sirloin steak. So flank steak, not super great because it's a little bit too chewy. Same with skirt steak, and obviously we're not going to use things like ribeyes or New York strips, stuff like that. All of those are things that they're too expensive. If you're going to deep fry, you don't need to use super expensive stuff like that. What's in the batter? Yeah, so we just finished putting that together. It is equal parts flour, cornstarch, water, and then 2 egg whites. So quarter cup each of flour, cornstarch, water, and 2 egg whites. That is really real basic tempura batter. Wow, there's so many people watching. That's really cool. Hello, everyone just joining. I guess I should introduce myself more often. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. Today I'm doing a tempura battered Beijing beef, which is a dish from the Panda Express menu. I've been doing a whole series on deconstructing Chinese American food, which is up on my YouTube channel. And we've sort of been diving into the way that a Chinese American food looks, why it looks the way that it looks, and sort of what happened to Chinese food when it came to America, and why did it change the way that it changed? What did Chinese people do to Chinese food to make it so that American people would start eating it? So a lot of the time when I'm hacking a recipe like a Panda Express recipe, I find myself doing things like adding a whole bunch of sugar or just adding a whole bunch of sauce. So that's sort of the American things in Chinese food that Americans love is really, really sweet, really, really flavorful, really, really saucy, stuff like that. So I've been doing a whole series on Chinese American food in particular. We've been doing a whole bunch of things from the Panda Express menu. So if you're interested in stuff like that, I recommend hopping over to the YouTube channel where you'll find lots of fun content, including the recipe video for this exact Beijing beef. That came out last Friday. So every Friday I've been releasing a new recipe video. So the recipe for this Beijing beef came out last Friday. Friday before that, I think I did a pad see ew was the Friday before that. Before that we did a Westlake soup from a couple restaurants. So we've been also doing some restaurant stuff from stuff that's local here in Oakland. And sort of just diving my way into recreating pretty much every recipe that I can find or get my hands on and figure out how to crack. So if you're interested in cooking stuff yourself and not just watching me cook stuff, or if you're just interested in watching me cook more stuff on the internet, YouTube, There's lots of fun stuff going on over there. So if you're watching on YouTube, that will be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen, which is youtube.com/woocancook. In addition to that, I've also, just threw a piece of beef away. I've also gotten into the habit of putting up a schedule of everything that I live stream. That lives up on the YouTube channel too. So if you're interested in cooking alongside me, you can look up everything that I cook on YouTube, or what we're going to be cooking within the next week or two, and you can cook with me. It's always more fun to cook stuff with other people. We can talk about all of the mistakes that we make, like the fact that I just threw a piece of steak down the drain on accident. So if you're interested in cooking stuff yourself, hop over to YouTube, check some of that out. Or if you just want to watch me cook more stuff, we're also live streaming over there. So lots of fun stuff going on over there. WooTube, yeah, for sure. All right, so that's our tempura. Let's hop over to the stove. We're done? No, we need... yeah, we could hop over to the stove. No, let's do our sauce first. Before I hop over to the stove, I'm going to assemble my sauce first, because otherwise I will probably forget. Do I let the batter pieces drain off? I don't. Maybe I should. I haven't really had trouble with it, so I'm guessing the reason that you're asking if I let the batter pieces dry off before they go into the fry is because we want to reduce the amount of liquid that goes into our stir fry. I haven't really experienced problems with that, mainly because it sort of just drips off on its own. But if you're really concerned about introducing liquid to your deep fry, definitely put it up on a dry rack. But I also don't think I own a dry rack that small, at least. So, good question though. How much oil's in the wok? A whole bottle. I think that's 32 ounces. So it's the whole bottle. I deep fry stuff a lot, so I find myself just reusing a lot of the same oil, which you should not get in the habit of doing too often because eventually that oil does start turning brown, and it also burns. But fryer oil is really expensive, so I probably should change my fryer oil more often, but I don't. All right, so for our sauce, I'm starting that was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, followed by 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce. Anytime that I find myself recreating Chinese American food, I find myself using a lot of hoisin sauce. And that's because hoisin sauce is super, super sweet. So I've found that that's the secret ingredient to what Americans think Chinese food is hoisin sauce, because it has a whole bunch of sugar, and it's really good. I love hoisin sauce. So. Works really well in recreating Chinese American food. The triple-fried oil, yeah, no. So what I usually do is I reuse the same fryer oil a lot. And what happens is over time it eventually will just start evaporating. So my fryer oil is constantly being replaced by just the fact that I have to replace all of the oil that evaporates. So I haven't actually thrown out my fryer oil in a long time because stuff evaporates so often. Although it might be time soon because it's looking pretty dark. Quarter cup of water. All right, so that is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce. That was a quarter cup of water, and then this is going to be 4 tablespoons, and this is. In my opinion, the secret ingredient to this whole recipe is sweet chili sauce. So this is sweet chili sauce. I think you probably will most commonly identify it as the sweet and sour sauce that you often see on the Lazy Susan at the dinner table in Chinese restaurants next to the soy sauce, because it's the sauce that you eat with egg rolls a lot, and it is full of umami. It's packed with sugar. So what we're doing, so I think the original recipe, or at least I'm guessing the way that they make it at Panda Express, uses brown sugar, I would guess. It's probably what they use most. So I'm right now removing that brown sugar and I'm going to replace it with sweet chili sauce, which I think is going to be a little bit more flavorful and a little bit more, just have a little bit more depth of flavor than the use of brown sugar. All right. This needs to drain a little bit. Let's see. Did you get everything? I think I got almost everything. Vegan, yeah. You could probably, yeah. So I actually have done a very similar recipe that's vegetarian friendly, which is a recipe is actually a authentic Chinese dish. It's called Hongxiao tofu, which is essentially like braised and deep fried tofu, which is very, very similar to what we're cooking today, but it actually is a lot less sweet. So if you're vegetarian, you can't eat meat or something, I would look up that. You can pop over to the YouTube channel and check out the recipe for Hongxiao tofu, which has no meat at all, and it actually maybe has beef broth in it, but otherwise, so it has animal products in it, but it doesn't have any meat in it, and that is because lots of Chinese food has very interesting uses of beef. Can I use a wok for cereal? I don't know how I would do that. Very interesting, John. Tell me what you're talking about. How much honey? That was a quarter cup of honey, so that was equal. So a quarter cup of honey plus 4 tablespoons of sweet chili sauce. I'm sorry if I sometimes I also like skip over ingredients because the questions are happening so fast that I frequently don't have time to address everything. So if I forget something, feel free to repeat it. But also if I didn't get to it, feel free to just pop over to the YouTube, and the recipe is up on the YouTube channel. So lots of times I forget to mention stuff, so I'm very sorry about that. Yeah, mapo tofu. Mapo tofu actually has beef in it, or yeah, ground pork probably. So we did a mapo tofu a couple days ago up on live stream, and that was actually the very first recipe that I put up on YouTube. So, but mapo tofu has meat in it for sure. So you can't if you're staying vegetarian, you can't eat that. But also very, very tasty. Cool. Well, hour of airtime. Thank you. Thanks everyone for donating the airtime and the awards too. That's super cool. This might be maybe the record. I've never had 5,000 super watches before. This is cool. Which I guess it means that I can take a little bit more time and talk through everything that I'm doing. My name is Wesley. Hello everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. We're here live streaming every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST. Today we're doing a Panda Express recipe for a Panda Express hack that I wrote a couple of days ago, or published a couple of days ago. That's up on my YouTube channel. I forgot to open the doors. Whoops. All right, one more time. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. We're here live streaming every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST. Sorry, I have to repeat myself because I had to go open the door because I forgot to open the door. If you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. I don't know everything about Chinese cooking and wok frying, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful. Vinegar, I skipped vinegar. Yeah, I did use 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar. Good point out, though. I might have forgotten to talk about that. We're releasing new recipes every Friday usually like Friday morning in the PST time zone. And so the last thing that we released was the Beijing Beef hack that I wrote a couple days ago. That went up last Friday. I've been doing a whole series on the YouTube channel for Chinese American cuisine and kind of diving into the way that Chinese American or Chinese food looks, why it looks the way that it looks, and sort of like what are the American qualities that came into existence with Chinese food when it came to America. So like what were Chinese chefs doing when they brought Chinese food to America, and why did they do those things in order to make them palatable to Americans in like say like probably like the 40s around then. I was watching, so if some folks have asked me, there's a Netflix series called The Search for General Tso, and that is actually the big inspiration for this series is The Search for General Tso, which is turn that down. Yeah, so very interesting, lots of fun stuff popping up on the YouTube channel, including the recipe for this exact stream. So that recipe lives over on the YouTube channel. Lots of fun stuff like that. We've also been doing a whole bunch of hacks for other dishes from restaurants that are local here in Oakland. So I did the pad see ew from Ni Cha Thai in Oakland. I also did I also did the Westlake soup from a restaurant in San Francisco called Dragon House, and a bunch of other stuff, lots of fun stuff coming up soon. We're diving into P.F. Chang's pretty soon too, so stuff like that all coming up very soon. Yan Can Cook, yeah, that's Yan Can Cook is the Yan Can Cook is a PBS series that's run by a guy named Martin Yan, and I grew up watching a lot of Yan Can Cook. So if you're interested, where the name Woo Can Cook comes from, it comes from the show Yan Can Cook. So if you're interested in cooking stuff yourself and not just watching me cook stuff, I recommend hopping over to YouTube, checking some of that stuff out. We're also live streaming simultaneously on YouTube. That would be the laptop behind me. So lots of folks have started watching over on YouTube. That's also where the schedule of everything that I cook lives. So you can look up what I'm going to be cooking, tune in when you're cooking. We're cooking stuff that you want to cook, and cook alongside me. It's always more fun to cook stuff together. All right. So that's our sauce, and we're ready to move over to our stove. All right, so over on the stove, I have some oil, 32 ounces specifically, of oil heating up in my wok. If you are using a wok, if this is the first time that you've used a wok for deep frying, I have come to determine that woks are my favorite thing to deep fry in because they have super wide width, which means the oil spreads out really, really wide, which means that you can use less oil and fry more stuff. So if you're doing it in a Dutch oven where it has a smaller, wider base, what happens is the oil becomes more and more shallow, so you can't fry as much stuff in it. So I love using a wok for it. But if you are using a wok for the first time and it is round bottom, be very, very careful because hot oil is very dangerous. So you can't see it, but at the bottom of my wok is a wok ring, and that keeps it from rolling around. So if this is the first time that you have ever deep fried something in a wok, make sure that you have a wok ring first. Otherwise, you're going to drop a whole bunch of hot oil onto the ground, which is not fun. All right, so my oil is at 350 degrees F, and we're dropping our beef in, I would say, no more than 10 pieces at a time. What we're really monitoring when we drop our beef in is how hot the oil gets, or how cold the oil gets, I should say. So we really want to make sure that our oil doesn't drop below 350, because once it drops below 350, we're not fully cooking the beef anymore, so that's not good. It also means that you're not going to get as crispy of a beef, so we can avoid that by doing a few things. The main thing that we're going to do is avoid overloading your wok, so don't just throw everything in there at once, because the more stuff that gets introduced to your wok, the faster that it's going to start cooling down. It makes just plain logic. The more cold stuff you put into hot oil, the faster that oil is going to start cooling down. So we're making sure that we don't throw everything in there at once. Otherwise, things are going to start cooling down very, very quickly. Maybe throw a little bit more in here. The other thing that I like doing when I deep fry stuff is I monitor the oil. So I have, you can't see it, but there's a thermometer sticking out at the top, and I'm monitoring how hot the oil is. So when it drops below 350, I'm going to turn the fire up a little bit, and it brings the heat up. So you want to be paying attention to the heat of your oil, and make sure that it's not dropping below 350. Peanut oil, actually it's vegetable oil. I think it's vegetable oil. It started off as canola oil, but it's gradually been replaced by vegetable oil. I have also used peanut oil quite a bit. Definitely a good go-to for wok frying, for sure. Yeah, candy thermometer. My candy thermometer is a real piece of junk. That's why it's sitting at such a weird angle, is because it's broken. All right, so my oil is rapidly dropping. We just hit 349, so I'm bringing up the temperature of my oil pretty quickly because I don't want to lose heat. What am I drinking? Yeah, today I'm drinking, what am I drinking? Yeah, that's it. Today I'm drinking Sagamore, which is a new rye that I recently got turned hip to. It's a real tasty rye. Most of the time when you're watching these streams, I'm probably drinking Scotch. I'm mostly a Scotch guy. But today I've been someone bought me a bottle of Sagamore, and it's a rye, and it's really tasty, so I love this rye. You're a vegan, yeah. So almost everything that I cook can be done vegan. I know that it looks tricky because we're cooking a bunch of beef, but I have definitely done a very, very similar recipe. I was talking about it earlier. It's called Hongxiao Tofu, which is just deep fried tofu. So you can use firm tofu and recreate basically the same thing, but just using tofu. It has a little bit thinner of a bread. You can also, almost everything that has meat in it, all of the sauce ingredients that have come from like animal byproducts. So if you're specifically a vegan, oyster sauce has a vegan alternative, which is just called vegan oyster sauce. Fish sauce has a vegan alternative, which is just called vegan fish sauce. And you can substitute the beef stock with vegetable stock. So if you're vegan or if you're vegetarian, almost everything that I cook can be done vegan. So like lots of times, like the curries, maybe not this recipe specifically, but like the pad thais, the pad see ews, all of the fried rices. A lot of the times when I'm testing stuff or like just start writing the recipe, a lot of the times what I'm using is tofu because tofu is cheaper. So if I don't really know how it's going to go at first, lots of times I'll just use tofu, and it works great. So, how is the meat prepared? Yeah, so the meat that we're cooking right now is Angus steak. We're using Angus steak today, and we're cutting it very, very small. So Angus steak, or actually pretty much all steak, at least the steaks that you're gonna deep fry, is a little bit too chewy to bite into. So in order to make sure that it is eatable, we cut them very, very small. So they're like maybe a 1/4 inch or so. And that size is going to be really, really important, is because the size is going to be how you are able to eat it. So if it's too large, you won't be able to bite it because steak, unlike like an orange chicken or a General Tso's chicken, because chicken is very tender. Unlike that, with steak, it's really chewy. So if it's too large, you won't be able to bite into it. So we don't want to do that. So most importantly is the size of the steak. And then we battered it in a tempura batter, which is a wet batter. Which it looks like this. So this is our tempura batter, and it is coated in the tempura batter, and then we're throwing it in the hot oil. So we're batch frying this stuff right now because we want to make sure that our oil temperature doesn't drop too low. Oh yeah, the recipe. Yeah, so I think I saw someone just no sympathy for the police. Yeah. No sympathy for the police watches all the time, so I know I've seen you popping up before. All of the recipes that I cook, almost everything that I cook, including this recipe, lives up on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/woocancook. And the recipes always come out on a Friday. So last Friday, I released the recipe for this Beijing beef, which is what we're cooking today. Pop over back. And all of that stuff lives over on the YouTube channel. So if you're looking for the recipe for what we're cooking today, pop over to the YouTube channel, and that's where all of that stuff lives. So for those of you who have been watching this whole time, you may have noticed that I'm letting this go for a little bit longer than normal. The temperature of my oil dropped a little bit lower than I would have liked it to. I think it went all the way down to, I think, like 280 something before it started coming back up. And that's just because I just put too much stuff in the wok. I think I overestimated how much stuff I could fit in there. And so the temperature of the oil, it's dropping a little bit too low, so we're leaving it in there for a little bit longer. That's exactly what you don't want to do, because that means that you're on the way to having a less than ideal crunchy piece of meat. Yeah, 350 is the target, so we're trying to stick around to 350. Usually when I first start heating the oil, I usually shoot for like 400, maybe 425. And then when you start putting the beef in, the temperature of the oil starts dropping pretty quickly. And it will usually, if you're doing it correctly and you're paying attention, you can ride the heat and make sure that it lives right at 350 without burning stuff. So right now we're living at 304, 305, and it started to come back up. But you don't want to get into the world of what I just did, where your oil starts dropping in temperature really rapidly. You definitely don't want to get into the 200s. That's not a good place to be. But I'm here to make mistakes so that you don't make the mistakes that I make. So lesson learned, don't overload your wok. All right, so I'm pulling out my first batch, and we're moving on to our second batch. I think this will probably happen in maybe 2 or 3 batches. We'll see. That's because the temperature gauge is not there. Yeah. There we go. All right, we're at about 400. So I'm going to introduce the next batch of steak here. And we're shooting for, should be maybe like no more than 10, 12 pieces at a time. There it goes. So that's popping into the oil. Real quick, this is what our finished steak is going to look like. So it is really, really crunchy. We have this very, very bubbly and like heavily breaded chicken or beef, which is what we're really looking for, is that super bready, super crispy chicken. And it's going to be super useful because once you start stir frying that beef, a lot of moisture is going to be introduced, and then you're going to have more trouble keeping it crunchy. So we want a really, really crunchy, really, really crispy tempura batter. All right, so that's going to be back in our wok. We're going to let that go for maybe another 5 minutes. We're looking for, really what we're doing is monitoring the temperature of our wok, making sure that oil stays at 350, and then pulling it out when it's still ready to go. Is it a hobby or a career for me? Yeah, right now, I don't know. It's sort of in between, just another guy. So I see lots of folks have popped over to YouTube, which is cool. So I guess we turn this off. Maybe turn it lower. Yeah, hello to everyone just joining. I suppose I should keep introducing myself. Hello to everyone just joining. Today we're doing a Beijing Beef, which is a Panda Express hack that I wrote and released up on my YouTube channel a couple days ago. Over on YouTube is where all of the recipes that I make live. So almost everything that I cook on stream lives in a recipe video that's usually up on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't popped over and checked out what's going on YouTube, lots of folks have already popped over to YouTube. I see lots of people popping up over there. If you haven't popped over to YouTube yet, definitely hop over and check it out. So if you're watching on Reddit, that would be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, that would be the channel that you're already on, so you can check it out. Hop over to the channel, and that is where all of the recipe videos live. So last Friday, I released the recipe for the thing that we're cooking right now, which is the Panda Express Beijing Beef. Yeah. Yeah, the oil temperature is fine, but if you may have noticed that the thermometer is broken, so it keeps popping out. That's why I have to keep popping back over and checking that. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So right now we're working our way to a 1,500 subscriber by the end of January, which I think we're probably going to hit. Some folks think that we can hit 2,000. I don't know about that, but maybe. I told Crystal that if we hit 2,000, if we hit 1,500 today, if we hit 1,500 by the end of January, then we'll shoot for 2,500 by the end of February. But if you want to help us hit the 2,000 goal by the end of January, hop over to YouTube, check some of that stuff out, and subscribe if you're interested. Don't subscribe if you're not interested. I don't want to spam you. But if you're interested in checking more stuff out like this, hop over to YouTube and subscribe. Yeah, I just need a new candy thermometer because this thing is a piece of junk. You love watching Yan Can cook? Yeah, Martin Yan was one of my all-time favorites when I was a kid growing up. I used to watch his show a lot, so. Chris. Sorry, Chris, I must have missed your question, but what is your lifelong question? Hit me up. Yeah, you got to deep fry beef one day. Yeah, if you've never deep fried beef, I highly recommend it. If you're into deep frying and you're comfortable with deep frying, the first thing, if you've never deep fried before, I would say the first thing that you should deep fry is chicken, because that's how you kind of like will understand how deep frying will work. Because chicken is definitely like the standard. Beef should not be the first thing that you deep fry because you need to learn a little bit more about how to deep fry first. But if you're really into deep frying, I highly recommend deep frying beef. Because it's beef and it's deep fried and it's really good. So I was definitely skeptical about this when I first started hacking this recipe because I had never seen a deep fried beef before. But I promise you that it's really, really good. All right, last up, I think this is the last batch of steak that we're going to be doing. If you've been following this whole time, you'll notice that we have been doing this in small batches, and that's because we were very closely monitoring the temperature of our wok oil. We don't want our wok to get too cold, or we don't want the oil in our wok to get too cold, because what happens when the oil drops below a certain point is you really stop cooking. So that's how you get like the internal temperatures stop cooking all the way through. That's also how you get less crunchy chicken or steak in this case. So we really want to make sure that the temperature of our wok doesn't drop. In this case, we're shooting for 350 is our goal here. And if you were watching earlier, you'll know that I did overload the wok earlier. And the temperature of the wok dropped too low, and that's okay. But don't do what I do. I'm here to make mistakes. So you don't have to. Oh, any tips for choosing the wok? Yeah, totally. I got lots of tips. Lots of folks have asked me about like what kind of woks to buy, or where I got my wok. So the wok that I use is nothing special. I think I picked it up at the corner store in Oakland. It's called Chenko, which is like just a restaurant supply company. So I don't even think that it has like a brand. It's just like a restaurant, like a standard Chinese restaurant wok. What's more important, rather than the brand, is the quality of metal that it's made out of. So what you're looking for when you buy a wok is you want to make sure that it has high heat potential. So things like carbon steel, cast iron, stainless steel, all of those things have high heat potential. If you buy something like Teflon that's made out of Teflon nonstick, or I believe aluminum doesn't get super hot, all of those things will not be able to get super hot. So unfortunately, when you go to like lots of big box stores, almost all of the woks that you will find have a Teflon nonstick coating. And I honestly don't understand why they even make those, because I guess it's like because the wok will be more similar to a standard frying pan. But if your wok has Teflon nonstick on it, it won't be able to get hot enough. So just make sure if you're buying your first wok, look for something that doesn't have a Teflon nonstick. So stainless steel, probably my best bet. My wok is made out of carbon steel, which is a really good alternative. Cast iron, if you can deal with a really heavy wok, is probably the best thing. Some folks have asked me about good recommendations for cooking on an induction top, wok cooking on an induction top, and I think my best solution for cooking on an induction top would be using a cast iron, because it has really high heat retention, which means it'll get really hot and then it will just stay hot because cast iron has that quality. Cool, yeah. Yeah, your first wok was nonstick. My first wok was nonstick too. Well, maybe my first wok was my parents' wok, which was, I think, stainless steel. But my first wok that I ever bought was a nonstick, because I just went to like Target and bought the first thing that I could find. And I just kept getting like super mushy stir fries, and I couldn't for the longest time figure out why it was so mushy. And then I discovered that that's because my wok is a piece of crap. So just make sure it doesn't have a Teflon coating, because that will be the end of you. Yeah, the thermometer's out again, I know. I've given up. I can't get it to stay in. What I'm doing is I'm just coming back and poking it back down. There it goes. Yeah, we're at like right around 350. So I bought this thermometer. I think I got it at TJ Maxx for like $5 or something. So probably should invest in a Thermapen soon, but the reason that Thermapens are so expensive is because they're like one of the only ones that work, I guess. So this thing's a piece of crap. How do I know when the beef is ready? I'm timing it, but that's also dependent on how you make sure that the temperature of the oil is right around 350. So if it drops below 350, that means that you're in the realm of like running the risk of not fully cooking what you're deep frying. So in this case, because we're cooking steak, it's actually not going to be that big of a deal if you undercook it, because worst case scenario, you'll just end up with like a medium rare steak. But it is a more big deal if you're deep frying things like pork or chicken, where you don't want to undercook at all, because that's when you start running the risk of things like E. coli. So we do want to make sure when we're doing things like pork or chicken that we really want to make sure that that oil stays at the right temperature. If you're really not sure, break one open and look. But usually the best way that I have found of monitoring whether or not it's cooked or not is monitoring the temperature of the oil and then just generally monitoring the exterior texture. And when it's like nice and crunchy, that's usually a sign that your beef is about ready. For a new camera, yeah. So the $15 for a new camera. So if folks have watched on YouTube before, you'll know that. Did it freeze? No. This camera. This is the third webcam. It freezes all the time. So if you watch on YouTube before, you'll have like at various points my face just stops moving in a certain place, and that's because the camera is a piece of junk. So. That's why I've been working on replacing it. Or actually what's happening is the stove camera is freezing and it's causing this face cam to freeze. So that's why we're raising money. So if you're watching on YouTube, that's why we're raising money for a new camera, is because the stupid camera keeps freezing. All right. This is looking good. Alright, so that is the last of our beef, so we can pop back over to the cutting board and check this out. So this is the general color and shade that we're looking for. I guess some of the contrast on the camera is going to change the color of our beef. But what we're looking for is a very, very deep golden brown, and a little bit of that the dark brown is going to pop out. So the Beijing beef, it looks a little bit different from what orange chicken or a deep fried chicken would look like, because the brown of the beef is going to start sticking out a little bit. So that's why it is a little bit dark brown in color. So that is like the general color that we're looking for, though, is that nice golden brown. And that is my approach to deep frying beef. How do I store the oil? Yeah, so Chris, so I do reuse my oil a lot. I probably reuse my oil more than I should. You probably only want to reuse your oil maybe 3 or 4 times. After that, it starts imparting flavor, and definitely the oil can start burning too. So I think what I've been doing is I reuse my oil every time some evaporates. I'll just add more. I probably should not reuse my oil as much as I do, but I do. So oil is really expensive, so I often reuse it. What I usually do, though, when I'm done cooking, so I'm about to do this, but I don't have a camera, so I won't be able to show you, is I like to pour off the oil into a separate bowl. Be very careful when you pour the oil off because it is very hot. So I like to pour it off into a bowl that's specifically a metal bowl that has a spout on it. So it's not gonna, number one, it has to be metal so it doesn't melt the bowl. Number two, that spout is really, really important because we're going to use that spout to funnel it. So what I do is I'll usually wait until the oil gets cold. So that usually will take almost like a full 24 hours. It takes very long for oil to cool back down. And then I put it through a cold brew coffee filter. So I used to use regular paper coffee filters, but it would literally take an entire week to filter a bottle of oil. So now I've started using cold brew coffee filters. It works really, really great. All right, so being very careful, as I just mentioned, I'm pouring my oil. Oh, don't spill. Some folks have asked me why it's so important to be really careful. Hot oil, unlike hot water, is really, really dangerous. If you drop a bowl of hot water onto your foot, you might burn your foot. If you drop a bowl of hot oil onto your foot, you will definitely burn the crap out of your foot. So be really careful when you are moving that stuff around. All right. So that is my oil. I'm setting my oil aside. You probably can't see it because I don't have a camera on that side of the stove. But I'm setting that oil aside and I'm going to let it cool. That will probably take almost an entire day. So probably by like around dinner time tomorrow. So I'm going to stream again tomorrow, and you can ask me if I filtered off my oil if you want to tune in. We're going to be back here at 6 o'clock PST tomorrow. And you can ask me if I filtered the oil yet. Usually it takes about like 12 to 18 hours before it starts cooling down like sufficiently. Sometimes if it's really cold, it will cool down by tomorrow morning. And then I'm just going to pour it through a coffee filter. So this is a cold brew coffee filter in particular, which is a little bit different, which is made out of fabric. And it's a little bit more porous, which means because it's specifically designed to filter cold things. So it filters a little bit quicker. But when I used to use it, I used to do it with like plain old paper coffee filters, and it would take like a full day, or like a full week before it would cook off. Right, so back over to the stove. I'm rinsing my wok off and reheating it. We're rinsing off, what we really want to do is when we rinse it off is we're just trying to rinse off all of the particulate matter that's left behind. So all of that like gunk and just like the leftover breading, all of that stuff, we don't want that to be left behind because that is going to end up in your stir fry. We don't want that. And all right, while that's going, the very last thing that I'm going to do, which I probably should have done earlier, is put together my cornstarch slurry. So if you've made Chinese food before, or if you've read a Chinese recipe before, you will have seen the use of cornstarch slurry all the time. So cornstarch, it reminds me a lot of like if you've ever made Italian food, is very similar to the use of pasta water. And we use in Italian food the use of pasta water because, I just realized I could do that. We use pasta water in Italian food because pasta water has a whole bunch of starch in it. So things like carbonaras and bologneses, you will use a whole bunch of pasta water to thicken up a sauce. So in Chinese food, we don't have pasta water, we use cornstarch. The amount of water is not super important. What's more important is that you dissolve solids of your cornstarch into a liquid form because you don't want it to clump up. And cornstarch has a quality about it where it clumps up with literally anything. So with the first like 3 times that I tested this recipe, I put it into the sauce, so into the honey-based this sauce. And what happened is that honey will start clumping up with cornstarch, which is a real big problem because then you start eating big clumps of cornstarch. So the cornstarch, that's going to be the very, very last thing that we add to our stir fry, and it's going to bring the whole sauce together and kind of like create a real nice cohesive sauce. How many viewers are concurrently watching? Right now we were up to 5,000 earlier. We're down to almost 300. It kind of comes up and down with Reddit. I'm not really sure what changes that. Lots of folks have hopped over to YouTube too, though. So. Yeah, totally. I'm sorry, I missed a lot of questions. Feel free, if I missed your question, feel free to repeat it, and hopefully I'll be able to see it. Lots of times I miss questions, so if I missed it, feel free to repeat it. Don't let people make fun of you. I'll always do my best to answer questions. Also, if I forget, usually, especially if there's lots of questions, I will circle back and answer questions. Yeah, something to do with the front page of Reddit. The background, yeah, the background music, so someone recently asked if this is my career. This is not my career. I'm not a professional chef. I just cook a lot and have a YouTube channel now. But what I do is I play music for a living. I play in a band we're called Trace Repeat. During COVID, we haven't been able to gig at all. So during the shutdown, I started this YouTube channel and I guess the Reddit channel too, doing fun recipes like what we're doing today. During the shutdown, I also started producing beats, which are all of the beats that are underneath the voiceover that you're listening to right now, which is happening on the YouTube channel, which is called Woo Cooks Beats, which is, I guess I could link that. There it is. And there is the YouTube channel. So that's Woo Cooks Beats. Lots of fun stuff going on over there. Yeah, COVID sucks. Bad for musicians. Real bummer. But that's how I ended up starting this thing, so that's real cool. All right. Do I consistently live stream on a schedule? Yes, Vasco. So I guess I should repeat it. My name is Wesley. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. We're here live streaming on YouTube and Reddit every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST. If you're looking for a schedule, the schedule lives on my YouTube channel, which Vesco, if you're watching on YouTube, that's the channel that you're already watching on. And there's a whole schedule of everything that I'm going to be cooking within the next maybe week and a half, probably all the way up to 2 weeks, I think, at this point. The band's name is called Trace Repeat, coming in hot. That's Trace Repeat. TraceRepeat.com. So all of that stuff, it lives on the YouTube channel. So if you're interested in following along what I'm going to be cooking next, so tomorrow I'm cooking something that I can't remember. I think we're doing Hawaiian fried rice tomorrow, but I could be wrong. So if someone's on the YouTube channel, they can tell me what I'm supposed to be cooking tomorrow. All of that schedule, it lives over on the YouTube channel. So if you want to check out what we're going to be cooking next, hop over to the YouTube channel, follow the schedule, and you can follow along and see what we're cooking next. In addition to that, so every Tuesday, Thursday, 6:30 PST, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST, we're streaming. And every Friday, I release a new recipe video. So last Friday, we did a recipe video for what we're cooking today, which is the Panda Express Beijing Beef, which is a hack that I had written in order to hack the Panda Express Beijing Beef. The recipe that this particular recipe is in addition to a series that I've been doing, which is sort of like recreating a whole bunch of Chinese American foods. Pretty much everything that we've done so far is from Panda Express, but we've got some PF Chang's stuff coming up soon. And just sort of diving into the way that like Chinese American food looks, and what makes it, like what happened to Chinese food when it came to America, and what were Chinese people doing in order to make it palatable for Americans. So like deconstructing Chinese American food and seeing like what makes it American, and then like recreating that like element. So lots of times when I recreate Chinese American food, I find myself adding a whole bunch of sugar. And then usually when I hack a recipe like that, I'll do my own version, which is what I call the Wu-Can Cook version, which I find frequently I'll do is I'll remove the American elements. So I'll remove things like sugar and like salt, and I'll replace them with things that come from like traditional Chinese cooking. So lots of times when I remove sugar, I'll replace them with things like sweet chili sauce or black bean sauce, or not black bean sauce, but like black vinegar, hoisin sauce, all of these things that have a little bit more sugar, but are like more complex in the way that they're sweet. So that sort of like drives the recipe, or like reinvents Chinese American food, and then like takes a look at like what it would look like if it was authentic Chinese cooking. So that's what that series is all about. So that's over on the YouTube channel. So if you're interested in stuff like that, I recommend hopping over to the YouTube channel, which if you're watching on Reddit, that would be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, that's the YouTube channel which you're already on. So lots of fun stuff coming up over on YouTube. If you're interested, recommend hopping over. We're working our way to a 1,500 subscriber goal by the end of January. I'm pretty sure we'll hit it. That is pretty ambitious. I'm not really sure where we're at right now. That stupid subscriber bar doesn't work anymore. And Hamcharo doesn't show up anymore either. I don't know where Hamcharo is. Yeah. The Chinese American food does better than traditional Chinese food. I wouldn't say it's better or worse. Like that, I don't really even think of Chinese American food as Chinese food anymore. I just think of it as like American food. Like honey sesame chicken is not really like Chinese food anymore. That's just American food. There's nothing about honey sesame chicken that's Chinese anymore. It's just American food. It's fried chicken. So lots of stuff like that hopping up on the YouTube. We've gained 300 subs in the last 30 minutes. Oh, that's really cool. Thanks for the update. Yeah, we're gonna make 2,000 by mid-January. That would be super cool. Thanks, guys. So yeah, So to answer your question, I don't know. That's a tough question. I find that like Chinese American food, or like Panda Express stuff. It's not really Chinese food anymore. It's just like American food. So like I freaking love honey sesame chicken. I think that's, if you're at, like, that's probably my favorite one that I've written so far. But like, if we're asking like which one is like the most authentic, or which one is better than the like American version, I don't know. All of them, like, that's sort of like asking if, like, you know, jjajangmyeon is better than a hamburger. It's like, oh, I don't know, I like them both. You know? But definitely, this was the first version. So this Beijing beef was the first time I've done a recipe where I did an alternate version that used traditional Chinese ingredients and didn't like it as much. But that was specifically because the version that I did that was like traditional Chinese was based off of like a cross between like a kung pao chicken and like a broccoli beef, I guess, or like a Mongolian beef sort of thing. So the beef wasn't deep fried, and it was good, but it wasn't as good because deep fried beef is really, really good. So let's hop over to the stove and let's finish this up. You will notice, if you've been watching this whole time, that once we get over to the wok and start stir-frying stuff, everything comes together really, really fast. So the rest of this recipe is probably going to happen within like maybe 5 minutes, maybe even less. And that's because wok frying happens really, really fast because it's on really, really high heat. So that means that when you are cooking in a wok, this probably wasn't hot enough. That means that when you're wok cooking, you want to be very careful and make sure that you have everything already chopped. So we don't want to be doing things like chopping ginger, chopping garlic, chopping veggies, mixing sauces, stuff like that. You want to have all of that done first. We in French cooking call that mise en place, which is like, I think, at least it translates to everything in its place, something like that. And the idea is to have all of that prep work done before you start moving over to the stove, because you're not going to have time to cut anything. Once stuff's happening in the wok, you're not going to have time anymore. So, what are my favorite actual Chinese dishes? Go back and forth. Right now I've been really into the lion's head meatballs. And I can't remember, zito, which is a big meatball. We did it on a live stream recently. That's actually a recipe that I'm going to be releasing soon. And that's probably one of my favorites. All right, so for your wok, what you want to do is heat your wok up very, very hot and then add the oil. Don't do what I did. It was just add the oil and then heat your wok. It'll still be fine. But ideally, this is a process in Chinese cooking that we call long yao. So we want to heat a very, very hot wok and then add cold oil to it and then swirl it around in your wok. We call that a long yao. And what's happening is we're creating a very nice non-stick surface in our wok. If you add cold oil to a cold oil to a cold wok and then heat the wok up like what I just did, you run the risk of developing a very sticky surface, which I think will be okay because my wok is very, very seasoned. But don't do what I just did. That was a mistake. Make sure your wok's hot before you add oil. You learned so much. Yeah, I'm glad you learned something. That's what I'm after. Is I generally hope people are learning something, or at least are entertained by the fact that I have made so many mistakes today. All right, so I'm adding my aromatics in. This is my garlic, followed by my ginger. Maybe a little bit too much ginger. That'll be okay. And then we're stir frying this for just long enough until it becomes fragrant. And yes, I definitely have a sticky wok. It'll be okay. That usually takes about 10 seconds. So, and then I'm following up with my veggies. That's my bell peppers first. And then I'm going to give those a head start before I add my onions. So if you're wondering why there's some black flakes going on, that's because I did not properly long yao. That's what happens. All right, so we're giving that a toss. I'm going to toss my onions in next. All right, and what we're just looking for, so we don't need these to be fully cooked. If you ever had a wok veggie stir fry, you'll know that the quality of vegetables that you're looking for is that it's mostly raw. So we are mostly very, very, not necessarily raw, but like super crispy vegetables. So like a crispy wok fried veggie is the quality that we're after. So we're not trying to get a super tender or like translucent veggie like you would do in a skillet. We really just want to cook off a little bit of the rawness. So we just don't want to be eating raw bell pepper. But once we're just past that raw state, that's the point that we're looking for with our veggies. All right. Will the wok crack the elements? That's a good question. I don't know. I've never tried wok cooking on an induction top, so I don't know. That's a tough question. All right, so I'm adding my beef and followed by my sauce. I've gotten in the habit of reserving a little bit of this sauce, so I'm going to start by adding maybe half, maybe a little bit less than that, what I'm doing is I'm reserving a little bit to make sure that we don't over-season what we're cooking. So I'm reserving the last maybe quarter cup, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe like 5 tablespoons of our sauce. And then if it needs it, we'll add it. But if it doesn't need it and we have enough sauce going on already, you should feel totally okay just leaving that out. Cast iron doesn't crack, yeah. So that's the other 2 pans that I use other than my wok are cast iron. So I have a cast iron skillet and then a cast iron Dutch oven. And those are including this wok, the only 3 things that I use in my entire kitchen. The catch is that it's very heavy, so you have to get used to having a super heavy pan. So I'm adding the last bit of my sauce, followed by my cornstarch. And you'll notice that as soon as I add that cornstarch, the sauce is going to start tightening up, and we're going to have a super thick and cohesive sauce. So it's going to go from a pretty liquidy and loose sauce to a very, very thick and luxurious sauce. And that is the quality that we're looking for. And that is what cornstarch does in Chinese cooking. What stuff went in before the wok, before the beef? Yeah, so before we added the beef, we started with our garlic and ginger. So anytime that you wok stir fry, you probably want to start with your aromatics. So garlic and ginger going in first, and then we bloom that just long enough until it's fragrant. So that usually takes, for me, about 10 seconds. And then I followed that with our veggies. So that was our bell peppers and onions. We gave that a head start for about 10 seconds. Not 10 seconds, maybe like a minute. We went just long enough for it to cook off a little bit of rawness. So bell peppers especially, but also onions, have a lot of like raw qualities to it that we don't want. But we're not really trying to get a really like well-cooked veggie. That's like what you associate with when folks say like a crunchy wok stir fry. Is that like kind of crunchy veggie that's like not tender at all. It's like just past cooked or just past raw, which is a wok veggie. And then we added our beef and our sauce, and we're ready to eat. So the very last thing that you want to do, and I have gotten in the habit of doing this on stream actually, at the end of every stream, is so we have all of this stuff. You'll notice there's a whole bunch of stuff stuck to your bottom of your wok. That's all like that sticky sauce and stuff. Give your wok a rinse before it cools down. You want to give that wok a rinse and rinse all of that stuff off. So because while your wok is still hot, you have this really nice non-stick surface going on. Once it cools down, you're going to have a lot more trouble getting that stuff off. So you're going to have to, for example, do things like plate your food and then immediately start eating, and then come back maybe 20, 30, 40 minutes later, and then try and clean your wok. What happens is if the wok is cooled down by then, which it almost certainly will be, all of that stuff is going to start sticking. So you won't have a non-stick surface anymore, and then you'll have to start doing things that you really don't want to be doing on things like a carbon steel wok, which is like things like scrubbing and like getting out steel wool. All of the things that you don't want to do, you have to use sponges, stuff like that, are all things that you don't want to do in a wok. So do yourself a favor. It's also just like generally a lot easier to clean a hot wok. So do yourself a favor, rinse it off while it's still hot. Give it a wipe down just to get that water off. And then I'm using just a tiny bit of oil here and coating. We need a little bit more oil. It's like a tablespoon, maybe half a tablespoon of oil. And then we're just coating the interior. You want to coat the entire portion of the wok. So lots of folks forget, but you also have to season the bottom of your wok too, because the reason that we season our woks, especially carbon steel, is not just to prevent, not just to create a nice cooking surface, but it's also to prevent rusting. So you want to season the bottom of your wok as much as you season the top of your wok, because it's going to keep it from rusting. And that is it. So do yourself a favor, proper wok care. Clean that stuff before you start eating, which I know is super frustrating, but post-dinner you will be very grateful that you did that. And it only really takes like maybe 15 seconds. right, so I've been working my way through eating through an entire 10-pound bag of brown rice. So I have finally finished that, and we're eating jasmine rice again. I don't know why I bought brown rice. Past me was trying to be healthy, I guess. But this is jasmine rice, and we're serving it on top. Oh, I forgot one thing. Right. The last thing that we want to do is top this with red chili flake. So, Panda Express, I found that all of their recipes, almost all of them, use red chili flake. Probably the more traditional thing that you would use is actually Szechuan peppercorn. But I actually think that the red chili flake is nice here, and I don't think you need Szechuan peppercorn. Super tasty. Is the flame still on under the wok? Yeah, it is on just a little bit, so it's on just pretty much just until we're finished cleaning it off. And that is it. Cool. Was it veggie oil? Yeah, so actually what I'm using today is grapeseed oil, which I think I'm mainly just that I can get at the grocery, or you could get it like in super large quantities. But really anything that has high heat potential. So vegetable oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil has been my go-to lately. Peanut oil will work too. Lots of folks ask me about peanut oil. Peanut oil is definitely like the most common and traditional thing to use in a wok stir fry. And it is really good in a wok stir fry, but I've found that peanut oil is not a super neutral oil. So that means that it's really great when you're wok stir frying, but when you're doing anything else, it's not really great because everything is going to start tasting like peanut. So when you're wok frying, it's okay because you can impart the flavor of peanut. But when you're doing things like, say if you're like scrambling an egg, well, scrambled eggs, you probably want to use olive oil. But like say like hash browns, for example, and you only have one kind of high heat oil, which is peanut oil, that's not the right oil to use. So if you're only going to keep one kind of oil in the house, I would say vegetable oil or canola oil is the right oil. And if you are going to have if you have a second oil in the house, the next thing that you should have is olive oil. But if you're going to have a third oil in the house, peanut oil. It's really great for wok frying. But I usually only carry 2 oils in the house, and the second one is olive oil. So I've settled on grapeseed oil has been my go-to. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, vegetable oil, but anything that's neutral that will work. Yellow and white stuff, yeah, that's bell pepper. So that's a sweet yellow bell pepper and a sweet white onion. Is dim sum Americanized? Probably most of the dim sum that you have is probably Americanized. But it definitely comes from Chinese food though. So I've actually done a couple dim sum things that are either posted or coming up soon. So I did it's called a taro cake, which comes from like super traditional dim sum. And then doing like a brown sugar cake that's called a ma lai gao. That's coming up soon too. So a couple dim sum things coming up soon. And I've been tiptoeing my way around doing a xiaolongbao, which is, I think, in America you call them soup dumplings, which is like basically a pot sticker, but it has soup inside of it, which are really hard to make. So I'm started tiptoeing around it, but eventually I'll get to it, and it will be very interesting. I'm very scared of it. Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you everyone for tuning in and checking out what we're doing. This is super fun. And so many people watching, that's super fun. Feel free to ask me more questions. If you have questions, yeah, everyone is going to take a bite. Oh yeah, that's so good. Fuck, that's so good. I shouldn't be sweating. But that's so good though, crap. Yeah, I hope you give this one a shot. That is so freaking good, oh my god. Okay. Stick around. If you have any questions, feel free to post some more questions. I know I probably missed a whole bunch of them. If I missed anything, usually what I'll do after the stream is I'll probably go back and answer questions in a written form, because I know I definitely missed a lot of stuff when people was getting like really busy. So if you asked a question and I missed it, feel free to repeat it. Also, usually what will happen is I'll probably walk away for a second and start cleaning stuff during the big thanks for watching screen. I know we have like an hour and change of airtime left on Reddit too, so if you have questions, feel free to post them. I'm going to turn the mic packs off, but I'll still be here cleaning dishes and stuff. So stick around and listen to some music. I'm gonna spin some Tracer Pete stuff. Actually, I'm gonna spin some Wu Can Cook stuff now, or Wu Cooks Beats stuff. New project. So feel free, if you have any questions, post them in the chats, and I'll do my best to answer everyone. Stick around and ask some questions, listen to some music, lots of fun stuff. I'll be here cleaning dishes, so if you have any questions, feel free to repost them. If you are interested, keep coming back. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST, both on Reddit and YouTube. But if you want to watch on desktop and you don't want to keep watching on your phone, YouTube's the place to be. Wednesdays at 6 p.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. PST. Lots of fun stuff coming up soon. Every Friday we're doing new recipe videos, and usually the GIF recipe will pop up on the subreddit for GIF recipes around like Saturday or Sunday, whenever I remember. Yeah, so hop over to YouTube. If you haven't yet, hop over to YouTube and check some of that out. Someone told me that we, Storm told me that we hit 1.5 already, so that's cool. I guess Crystal was right. But yeah, hop over to YouTube. If you haven't already, pop over to YouTube, check out some of that stuff. We're working our way to a 1,500 subscriber count by the end of January, which apparently we made already. So we'll probably be shooting for 2,000 by the end of the month. So Crystal was right. So hop over to YouTube, check some of that stuff out. Next up, tomorrow I think we're doing a Hawaiian fried rice. I think that's what we're doing. And this Friday coming up, we're going to be releasing a Filipino pancit, which I'm kind of nervous about because my Filipino friends have told me that maybe you did it wrong. We'll see. But that's coming up this Friday. Thank you for finally admitting it. Yeah, you were right. You were right. We're going to shoot for 2,000 by the end of the month, so we'll see how it goes. So yeah, hop over to YouTube if you haven't checked that out yet. Lots of fun content coming up soon. Some PF Chang. So I just finished doing the mushu pork recipe for PF Chang's. That's coming up soon. What else? Lion's Head meatballs. That's coming up really soon. I forget what else is coming up. Pancit, something up too. So all that stuff coming up soon. Let me know if you have any questions. Stick around, listen to some music, pop your questions in the chat. I'm going to turn the mic packs off, but I'll be here doing dishes. So hit me with your questions if you got them. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you soon.
Leave it with the babysitter, mama call Am I coming out of left field?